She tightened her grip on the keys as they were tossed across the table, the metal clinking sharply against the polished wood. "Go on," her mother-in-law said with a smirk, folding her arms. "That's your share." A ripple of laughter spread around the room. She didn't move immediately. Her fingers curled slowly around the keys, her chest tightening as she forced herself to breathe evenly. The air felt thick, heavy with judgment. "That old thing," one of her brothers-in-law added, shaking his head. "It barely even runs." "It's more than she deserves," another voice chimed in. She lifted her eyes, meeting their amused expressions one by one. Not a single face showed kindness. Not even her husband's. He avoided her gaze entirely, staring down at his phone like none of this concerned him. "Thank you," she said quietly. The laughter grew louder. "Did you hear that?" her mother-in-law mocked. She said thank you. She stood up, ignoring the burning sensation behind her eyes. "Where is it?" Her father-in-law's lawyer, who had remained silent until now, cleared his throat. "It's parked outside the old storage yard. The paperwork is already signed." "Perfect," she replied. "You're not even going to check it first?" One of them scoffed. She shook her head. "No need." Another burst of laughter followed her as she walked out of the house, each step steady, even as her heart pounded. The van looked worse than she imagined. Rust covered most of its body, the paint peeling off in jagged patches. One of the windows was cracked, and the tires looked like they hadn't been changed in years. She stood there for a moment, staring at it. "This is what they think I'm worth," she whispered. Then she exhaled slowly, straightened her shoulders, and unlocked the door. The inside smelled of dust and neglect. She climbed in, brushing debris off the seat before sitting down. The engine groaned when she turned the key, coughing like it might give up entirely. "Come on, please," she murmured. After a few tense seconds, it roared weakly to life. She let out a small breath, almost a laugh, though there was no humor in it. "All right," she said softly. "Let's see what we can do." The first few days were harder than she expected. She cleaned the van herself, scrubbing every surface, wiping away years of dirt. Her hands ached, her back protested, but she kept going. At night, she sat inside it, staring at the empty space, her mind racing. "This is ridiculous," she muttered to herself one evening. "What am I even doing?" Her phone buzzed. A message from her husband. "Hope you're enjoying your gift." She stared at the screen, her jaw tightening. "Enjoying it?" she whispered. "You watched them humiliate me." She didn't reply. Instead, she set the phone aside and leaned back, closing her eyes. "You can either let this break you," she said under her breath, "or you can turn it into something." The next morning, she started again. While cleaning under the back seat, her fingers brushed against something unusual. She paused, frowning. "That's odd." She pushed aside the loose panel, revealing a narrow compartment hidden beneath. Her heart skipped. "Wait, what?" She reached inside carefully, pulling out a small, worn envelope. Dust clung to it, the edges yellowed with age. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside were documents. Old, but carefully preserved. She scanned the first page, her breath catching. This can't be real. Her pulse quickened as she read further, her eyes widening with every line. "Why would this be here?" she whispered. There's also a small key taped to the inside of the envelope. She held it up, staring at it. A key to what? Her mind raced. None of this made sense. But one thing was clear. This one wasn't as worthless as they believed. She leaned back against the seat, her thoughts spinning. "They didn't even bother to check," she said slowly. "They just laughed and gave it away." A small, determined smile formed on her lips. Big mistake. She folded the documents carefully, clutching them tightly. "Let's find out what you're hiding," she murmured, glancing around the van as if it might answer her. Outside, the world carried on as usual, unaware that everything was about to change. And for the first time since that humiliating moment in the living room, she felt something shift inside her. Hope. She didn't sleep that night. The envelope lay on the small table beside her bed, untouched but impossible to ignore. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those documents again. The signatures, the faded stamps, the name that made her heart pound. "This changes everything," she whispered into the darkness. By morning, she was already back in the van. All right, she said, gripping the steering wheel. Let's finish this. The key from the envelope felt cold in her palm as she drove toward the address written in the documents. It led her to a part of town she had never visited. Quiet, almost forgotten, lined with old warehouses and abandoned offices. She slowed the van, scanning the numbers. Come on, where is it? Then she saw it. A large, iron gate stood ahead, rusted but still standing strong. A faded sign hung above it, barely readable. Her heart raced. This has to be it. She stepped out of the van, her breath shallow, and approached the gate. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted the key. Please work, she murmured. The lock resisted at first, then clicked open with a sharp sound that echoed in the silence. She froze. Did that really just... Slowly, she pushed the gate open. Inside was an old warehouse. Dust covered everything, and the air smelled stale. But it wasn't empty. Her eyes widened. No way. Equipment. Machinery. Covered in sheets, but clearly valuable. She stepped forward cautiously, pulling one of the covers aside. Her breath caught. This is still intact. She moved deeper inside, uncovering more. This isn't junk, she said, her voice rising with disbelief. This is a full operation. Her mind raced, connecting the dots. The van, the hidden compartment, the documents, the key. They didn't just give me a van, she whispered. They gave me everything. A sudden sound behind her made her turn sharply. Who's there? Footsteps approached. Then a voice. You're not supposed to be here. She stiffened. A man stepped into view, older, cautious, his eyes scanning her. I have the key, she said quickly, holding it up. And the documents. He narrowed his eyes. Let me see. She hesitated, then handed them over. He studied the papers carefully, his expression changing. Where did you get this? It was hidden in the van, she replied. They gave it to me as part of an inheritance. He let out a slow breath. They had no idea, did they? She shook her head. None. He looked at her again, this time differently. This place belonged to your father-in-law, he said. He built something here before everything went wrong. Went wrong, she asked. There was a dispute. The family thought it failed. They abandoned it. He paused. But it didn't fail. It was just forgotten. Her chest tightened. Why would he hide it? The man glanced at the papers. Maybe he knew they wouldn't understand its value. Silence settled between them. Then she spoke, her voice steady. I want to rebuild it. He raised an eyebrow. You? Yes. You realize what that means? I do, she said firmly, and I'm not walking away. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, he said. Then let's begin. Months passed. The van that once carried dust and silence now carried tools, supplies, and purpose. She worked harder than she ever had before. Day after day, she rebuilt what had been left behind. And slowly, it came back to life. The business grew. What started as a forgotten warehouse turned into something powerful, profitable, respected, unstoppable. And then, one afternoon they came. Her in-laws. She saw them standing outside, their expressions no longer amused. Confused. Shocked. What is this? Her mother-in-law asked, her voice uncertain. She stepped forward, calm and composed. This, she replied, this is what you gave me. That van, one of them said. That piece of trash? She smiled faintly. It was never just a van. They exchanged uneasy glances. We didn't know, her husband finally said, stepping forward. She met his eyes, her expression unreadable. I know, she replied. Silence hung in the air. We should talk, her mother-in-law said carefully. She shook her head. No, she said. There's nothing left to say. They stood there, stunned, as she turned and walked back inside. The same people who had laughed at her now stood in silence, watching her walk away with everything they had failed to see. And this time, no one was laughing.